4 of the most creative minds you could find in this entire industry with us here on stage. I say 4, because these 4, in case you had any wondering about that. And I am really excited to talk with them. And first of all, you'll have to pay me afterwards because I overheard what they were just talking about. And that right there could be an article. It's fascinating. So with that, let me introduce our panel. Although they really need no introduction, I'm sure they have kept a lot of you up at night, like they have me. Starting with Michael Carita, who is turning 30 this year, or just turned 30, and has 10 novels out. So I don't know. He's not 10 novels, which made me feel very lazy. And I hadn't known you until this latest book is coming out, The Prophet, and it kept me up. I was reading it on the plane ride up here, and it is fantastic. So now I go backwards in time and will catch up on all of your work. Also, Michael Connolly. Michael is a longtime author, a best-selling author. He was also a finalist for a Pulitzer. He's been president of the Mystery Writers Association. He's consulted for Level 9 and TV shows, and he's also been gambling on the hit show Castle. Have you seen him gambling there? That's a nice little thing. And Brad Meltzer, who's a good friend of mine, he is also, in addition to being a novelist, he has so many hats. He started out like I did as a lawyer and then found there were better things to do, I guess. Talk about that. Great novelist. He also has a show on the History Channel called Decoded. He's also even designed some clothing. So he's kind of done all of these things. Fantastic books. And Nelson DeMille, who has a storied career. I'm sure you've seen all of his books. And he started out, and he's done everything. He's a decorated Vietnam War veteran, 3 honorary doctorates, and many of his books, Gay Mouse Lion, Palm Island, General's Daughter, they go on and on. Everybody knows you as well. So we're very glad to have him. So we're gonna start off. Let's start off with this. You know, Brad, you went to law school. Nelson, you went to Vietnam. Michael, you went off to be an award-winning journalist first. And Michael, you went to be a private investigator. Were those careers fallback plans for your dream of writing, or did writing emerge somehow later on as something you thought you'd do? So we'll start down here.
For me, it was always to feed writing. I wanted to write ever since I began reading. And I think it was a deep fear of having to work for a living that was put in the air. But really, the private investigation field was an interest as an occupation. What I do, I always had one eye for how I use that book. The books I fell in love with earlier were mysteries, and it was great. It was getting paid research essentially every day. Even the really painful, long, boring 16-hour surveillances where no one moved and you just sat in the car. I looked at that as always Christopher DeMille. That was the way I kept reassuring myself. I always wanted to write those.
You're here in New York, so if you need any private investigating time, I'm sure they'll hook you up.
I'm sure there are people here, yes.
Great. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I have kind of the same answer. Christopher DeMille. I wanted to write crime novels, and so it's kind of like I had very little experience in that world, so it's like, how do you get there? And I chose journalism. Always, the papers I worked for, I always asked to be on the police beat, and always wanted to stay on the police beat. So I can meet detectives, go to crime scenes, kind of pick up the detail from there. And as you say, fallback, it's a pretty interesting job. So, you say you want to be a novelist, but who knows if it can happen. And so I always thought this would be a pretty good job if it doesn't work out on the novel side.
I think it worked out
So far.
I also started, I went to law school out of fear. I was a coward. I grew up, and money was a big issue for my family. My dad was terrible with money, and I remember he would only fill up the car with like $2 worth of gas. He didn't have enough to actually fill it up. And I went to law school because I was terrified. I didn't want to live like that. Money was a real issue with my family growing up, and so I went to law school completely out of fear, so that if this writing thing didn't work out, I at least had something that would pay my bills because my dad couldn't pay the bills. And I never thought it was going to be research. I didn't think it was a big risk, but it wound up being there. As soon as I got there, everything went into the mill. So, but to me, I actually stumbled into it and then found that I loved talking to these imaginary people every day. I went to a job that didn't work out the way I wanted to, and I started getting rejection letters, and I didn't care. I got 24 rejection letters. There were only 20 publishers. I got 24 rejection letters. Some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point, but I said I love this stuff.
I thought about writing when I was in college, the first time, not in high school, but in college, and then I kind of threw it back burner. I love to read. But I was so intimidated by the things I was reading, because you're reading good stuff, you're not reading commercial stuff. I said, I could never do this, I could never do Hemingway, I could never do Fitzgerald. Then I started reading popular bestsellers, and I said, this is not that good, and I could do this. And I think it was the Vietnam experience that put me over the edge. I said, I have a story. Like a lot of people coming back from war, you have a story to tell. You don't want to say it verbally, you don't want to bore people with your story. And I started, I had a diary which I kept in Vietnam. And I started taking this diary and I started building a novel around it. The novel never got published. But what it did is it got me into the idea that I could write. And I understood at least the basics of writing, and I was fortunate to have met an editor when I was in the Army, and we connected back to New York when we both came back from Vietnam. So, you know, and if you live in New York and you want to be a writer, this is a good place to live. You can't, in New York, you're going to bump into somebody who's in the business.
It's impossible not to.